On your mind now, tune into the feed. We're planting digital flowers from a single tiny seed. Yeah, power to the collective, in the data and the soul. The hive mind's getting louder, finding voice in control.
Yeah, trying to find the right path sometimes is a struggle. A jigsaw in the dark, missing pieces, unknown puzzle. Blurry fuzzy pictures as the mind becomes clear. Fairy tale of a wolf, a boy crying, a near fear. Scribbling numbers, writing notes, a clue that you find. The hope being one day sharing them with the hive mind. Swapping and dropping the blue and swallowing the red pill. NPCs all around, distorted reality is how you still feel. Should you risk going alone down that rabbit hole, or ask the hive mind, see what else your big brother stole? Collective consciousness helps uncover any clue. Powerful ideas shared amongst the whole crew. And the best thing about it, transaction cost is free. Plop just a drop of water, more splash in a tsunami.
Your mind now, tune into the feed. We're planting digital flowers from a single tiny seed. Yeah, power to the collective, in the data and the soul. The hive mind's getting louder, finding voice in control.
That single ripple echoes, a signal in the sea. Unlocking every deadbolt, we forge a master key. They built the maze to break us, to keep us all apart. But every node connected is a brand new place to start. So dump your data stream here, your theories and your doubt. Let the pattern sniffers work, the hidden logic out. From a million different angles, we analyze the code. Lighten up the burden and we share the heavy load. The picture gets clearer, the static starts to fade. A brand new foundation by the collective has been laid.
On your mind now, tune into the feed. We're planting digital flowers from a single tiny seed. Yeah, power to the collective, in the data and the soul. The hive mind's getting louder, finding voice in control.
The picture gets clearer, the static starts to fade. A brand new foundation by the collective has been laid. So let them call you crazy with your tinfoil hat. It's a necessary filter for the mindless chit-chat. They broadcast their agenda, selling lie after lie, while drawing strange new patterns in a crisscross sky. But that hat ain't for hiding, it's an antenna now you see. Tuned into the frequency of the minds that wanna be free. The frantic search for answers you once did all alone is now a data packet uploaded from your phone. So polish up your helmet, there's no need to ever doubt. We're the ones who see the signal when the rest have tuned it out.
On your mind now, tune into the feed. We're planting digital flowers from a single tiny seed. Yeah, power to the collective, in the data and the soul. The hive mind's getting louder, finding voice in control.
Birds flying high, you know how I feel. Sun in the sky, you know how I feel. Breeze drifting on by, you know how I feel. It's a new dawn, it's a new day, it's a new life for me, yeah.
Turn on your mind now, tune into the feed. We're planting digital flowers from a single tiny seed. Yeah, power to the collective, in the data and the soul. The hive mind's getting louder, finding voice in control.
What is going on, Hive? Today is Tuesday, July 29th, 2025. And I am extremely excited for tonight's stream with defense trial attorney Ally Benevento and one of the Hive's favorites, Devil's Advocates. If you notice the theme on stage, this is a live look at the Moscow Police Department. They are losing their minds that people are actually digging into what they are claiming was their investigation. It seems like nothing was followed up on, and they never really had anybody else take a look at it. It was just, trust us, bro. The stuff that is coming out in those documents, I called it in a video the other day, but mark my words, that entire area of Idaho and the news will be in a full retreat within 90 days. Actually, I would even say that we don't even have 90 days. Within 37 days. However many days left Bryan has to file his appeal. Buckle up. We got a good one tonight. I want to say what's up to everybody, and I'm going to bring DA and Ally up right after I say what's up to everybody. I see who do we got in here? We got Lily. Caleb says, trust me, bro. Aaron, good to see you. I agree. Scott Payne was awesome. Gamble's here. Teresa. Amanda from West Virginia. Rachel, who lives near the ice wall, says, devil woman. Marcia's tuning in from Nashville. What's going on, Festive? Good to see you. Even the interview room was knocking this crazy investigation. If that's happening, you know it's effed up. I agree, Jeremy. What's going on, Jesse's girl? Hope Norris, new commenter, great channel. Well, thank you, and welcome to the Hive. We're happy to have you. Eileen, Teresa, shout out to my fellow cheesehead. Crime Spy says, what's up, Speedy Bird? That's Birdino to you. Oh, Rachel, who lives near the ice wall again. What's going on? Chantilly Lace with the resting biatch face. Brooke, I agree. It's going to be a great night. It is going to be a good one. Lauren, Lisa, Marianne, Kathy, Divine Leah's tuning in from the Hive Down Under. What's good, Don? Carrie's tuning in from Boise. Amy from Arizona. Karen's always tuning in from the UK. Good to see you. What's going on, Jody? Happy birthday, Chef Jay Freeman. Thank you for choosing to celebrate with the Hive. Heatherly, how are you doing? Catch you on the flip side. Good to see you. Louisiana, North Carolina, River Falls, Jake Paul. Any relation to Jake Paul? That'd be hilarious if that was actually the Jake Paul. Oh, Sherlock Romes is in the house. Just dropped a sandwich. Well, Hive, like I said, buckle up. We got a good one. I'm honored to have Ally here in the Hive once again. I'm going to go ahead and bring up her and Devil's Advocates. What is going on?
Hey, guys.
Hey. How are you doing?
Great. How are you?
Well, I'm ready to hear your opinion on a lot of stuff. I guess we could put it that way. I mean, I don't know how much you've been staying up to date with the gag order ending and some of the new documents that have been coming out. And even if you haven't, you're in the right place to be brought up to speed rather quickly, I might say.
Sounds great.
Yeah. DA, how you doing, brother?
I'm good. How are you? It seems like we don't talk enough during the week, so I have to catch up with you live in front of everybody. But yeah, I'm good.
That's all right. Yeah, it was pretty good. My wife and I had a great 1-year wedding anniversary over the weekend. We're going to go to State Fair this weekend.
Nice.
So Wisconsin State Fair is quite the attraction. You got giant cream puffs the size of your head, and a bunch of cows and a bunch of deep fried stuff. But no, I'm very excited to have both of you here. And would you agree, DA, that this is probably a live look inside Moscow PD right now?
Yeah, I don't know how much Ally's dug into the police report stuff. She's probably more focused on the plea deal questions. But yeah, the documents that are getting released, it almost, if I were a conspiracy theorist, I swear to God, they wanted to rush out with, here's all the stuff we couldn't tell you for 2.5 years now. Some internet sleuth would tell us, break this, so that because we couldn't talk about it. So now you can. So it's like, I can't believe they're admitting to some of the stuff they're admitting to, even with all the redactions. I'm just like, I can't believe that's been out there for 2 years. So.
And Ally, I have some slides that I used from the other night that we're going to get to that I just want to get your take on as far as from a courtroom layout. I guess I could leave it at that, and it'll be kind of hard to describe it until you see it. But real quick, just some housekeeping stuff. The interview of Scott Payne has been posted, so please go and like and comment. Scott sent me an email this morning that he had a blast, and when we were talking backstage, he was like, "Wait, so people are just gonna like live comment and ask me questions and do rapid fire?" And I'm like, "Oh yeah, we always do it kind of off the hip." And he really enjoyed it. And so that was awesome. And thank you to everybody who submitted a question and everybody who was tuning in for that. There was a lot of comments pushing me to talk about the Idaho 4 case with him. And I want to say that after editing the video and really listen to what he had said, there's some good takeaways that we can apply to this case. One being how when he was put out for a hit for a murder for hire, if you guys caught what he said, "Hey, this is your one chance to play ball. We can make it look real. We'll take some pictures and we'll make it seem like you're gone, but this is your one chance." And there was a couple of other things when he talked about the marshals and how the tools that they have compared to the FBI are just unbelievable. So that will be in tomorrow's stream. I will be breaking down those tidbits, but that has been posted if you were not able to tune in last night. And DA and Ally, I maybe this doesn't apply as much to you, just knowing how long we've been digging into this case. So feel free to chime in if you'd like. But DA, I've been doing a question of the day from the Discord, and Cat's Mojo asked, "Birdie, this case has consumed you and all of us here watching and listening to you. Do you have a point where you just have to step back and give yourself a breather to refresh your mind and thoughts? Or is your mind always on overdrive with or without your tinfoil hat?" And I could say I've had like a weird amount of dreams about this case. I literally have I can't stop, whether I'm awake, whether I'm asleep. But last night having Scott on the stream, that was a good refresher to not just be, diving in. And I think that that's a healthy thing to do. I don't know if you would, if you have an opinion on that, DA.
I mean, yeah, you have to find ways to have stress relief in between all of it because it's a nonstop grind. And I heard you briefly, I tuned into a live just for a moment, and I heard you briefly saying, I feel the same way. How the hell are there YouTubers who have already gone through all 317 documents, like within hours of it having dropped? I've done 9 hours of long form videos, and I've only made it through 151 of the 317 documents. So I don't know how people do it. And my life feels like I'm nonstop researching this case. And I've got 2 other cases that I try to follow, which are also having big things happen in my life. So I have to find ways to find distractions from time to time because it's nonstop. I don't know. I can't keep up with it right now. So
it's crazy. And, one of the things that I will say is the whole like fresh eyes coming onto a case. That's a real thing. I've always made the correlation with like a Netflix documentary. You look at the Gabby Petito case and you look at all the stuff that comes out after millions of eyes see it for the first time, and fresh eyes, fresh brains. And so I do think there's something to that. By
the way, I'm so pissed. I was so excited. I had Ally getting excited about Kohberger's case, right? And I was so pissed when literally she texted me and she's like, I'm getting ready to do the Kohberger thing with you. I'm excited. And then it's like he submitted the plea thing, and I'm like, right? I'm just like, well, shit. Like really, I was going to be in the courtroom. I was going to talk to her on a weekly basis. I was so stoked, and then it went to hell.
How do you think I feel, Lee? I feel like I made that happen. When I say it was the day after, like no shit, it was the day after.
See, yeah, I'm pretty sure it's your fault. Because you jumped in, it went to shit. So okay, well now I know not to invite you on another case.
Oh, that's hilarious. They knew you were coming, Ally. That's what it was. They got scared.
Oh yeah, they were terrified. But she starts breaking out the legal documents. They're in deep shit.
Well, I have 2 quick Hive Mind finds. Ally, you'll be able to comment on the second one. But somebody sent me this, and I I was laughing so hard, and they said there's a Hive member that was just caught on camera. This is the most extreme tinfoil hat that I think I might have ever seen, or that I might have ever. I don't even know what that is, how you get that on your head, but I want one. And
nobody's scanning that guy's brain. No matter which angle you come at with the radiation, he's got it covered.
It's bouncing back at somebody at that point.
Right? Yeah.
No, but that was hilarious. Okay, so now we can start kind of diving into, Ally, where your expertise will really be helpful for the Hive. And this was a screen grab that somebody sent me from Harsh Reality. And it was that Christy Gonzalez was threatened by a wannabe serial killer. Now, I know for the sake of News Nation, they probably wouldn't show the real texts. However, when I'm looking at this, I understand that you can't show the real text or the screenshot. But if I read this out loud, doesn't it seem like it's dramatized, and it seems almost unbelievable that somebody would send this to a victim's mother after this sentencing hearing? And it says, sitting near you in court and watching you is a joke. So it's somebody in the
It wasn't
room.
me. It wasn't me.
Right, yeah,
record.
I was going to say, DA, let's see your phones right now.
Oh shit.
You know that Bryan is innocent. Making threats to Bryan about getting raped in prison was very silly. I am in contact with a lot of serial killers, including BTK, and I've been put in contact with a wannabe serial killer who's in Moscow, Idaho, and I've given him your address. Are you kidding me?
Right.
This is like
someone's trying to scare her, I think, and intimidate her, if at best.
Or she made it up.
Or she made it up for it. Yeah, right. There you go. Conspiracy.
They love attention.
Yeah.
Yes. The family loves attention.
Right.
Yes. And I mean, like, there is one thing that I've learned to do throughout diving into this case or just headlines. I think if you're red pilled, I would that's how I would say it. It's like, if you're red pilled, if you're not a mouth breathing fluoridated NPC zombie, you can read the headlines and understand that the headline is trying to tell you about the entire article, assuming you're not going to read into the facts and their narrative still gets pushed. That's what this text is. And something else that was super interesting, I do not have a screen grab of it, but I will make sure I'm going to write it down to put this on an upcoming stream. And if you were in the Discord last night, I talked about it. Bryan Kohberger's mom had written on her Facebook wall, and somebody sent me the archived thread, and it was just so narrative spoken, where it's like, he's going out. It's like, I'm going to miss him so much. I probably won't be around this weekend because I'll be too busy crying. He's studying criminology. He's far away from family. He knows no one, and no one was capitalized. And he goes, and he's right on the border of Washington and Pullman, right by Idaho. And like, it laid out this narrative of like, he doesn't know anybody. He has no friends, no family, and he's right by where the murder scene's going to be, like 2 months before. And I started asking, where are the photos of Bryan at Washington State? Does anybody have a picture of Bryan TAing? Does anybody actually see Bryan Kohberger on campus? Because there was kids that said he was missing from class a lot. You have one neighbor and an Asian girl from a documentary. And then these alleged people that saw him at the pool party, right? But it just seems weird. You're going to get a PhD and you're 27 at the time, 28, and your mom's saying she's going to cry. If my mom posted that on Facebook, I'm hacking her account at that point. Like, I don't know what I'm doing. Like, so what are your thoughts in general just on that or this text? Do you think it's just to push a narrative that they're getting threatened and everyone should, I don't know.
I mean, I mean, it's funny because Ally went a different place, and my thought was somebody's just trying to intimidate the family. Ally went to the family, maybe just doing a publicity stunt, and it is in keep, like, the Gonzalez's are all over every single opportunity to be on TV. So I don't know, as far as Bryan Kohberger, whether he was really there or not, it's harder for me to go that far down the rabbit hole, but it's a good point. I have never seen a picture of Kohberger at the university, but I haven't seen the picture of a lot of the people at the university. For that matter, I haven't seen pictures of any of the girls other than what they posted on TV over and over again. So, you know, it's like, but anyways, I guess what the bottom of the line is that, yeah, could there be, I know there's manipulation going on in the press, and is this something that the family did for a publicity stunt? I don't know.
And my question is, Does everybody in that courtroom just have her phone number? Because
Right.
I would highly doubt that they do. So that would tell me, is it one of the victim's family members? The other ones?
Yeah.
Who else was going to have their number?
Yeah.
So it's just odd. It's just so odd. And
it's weird because as I'm going through, I was sitting in the courtroom and I know where they were sitting, and I'm looking around to myself in my mind of who was sitting next to me. I'm like, who would have set that next to me? Like,
yeah. Yeah. And
but, I don't know.
so Ally, this is a good segue into some of the questions that I have for you. And I have some on the Discord as well that I'm going to pull up right now because we had a little thread for questions for you to ask. So I will start with this. Is it odd to you that in every hearing for all of the evidence, Bryan Kohberger and the state were facing the judge? Normal layout. They're clearly on camera. But how odd is it that during the plea deal and the sentencing, they have their table faced off to the side? Why would that be?
Okay. And am I to, can you put it back? So the gentleman at the podium.
He took
Steve Gonzalez.
Yeah, okay, that I thought so. They have him facing the people who are going to speak. So at the sentencing, the idea is to give the victims the opportunity to have their moment of catharsis, right? To get everything that they want to get out. A lot of them are speaking directly to him. A lot of them may speak to the judge, but I think the theory is that he's not supposed to be the center of attention, believe it or not, at that type of hearing. But I can actually see in different jurisdictions, it actually goes the opposite. They don't want the defendant looking at the victims. They don't want the defendant turned towards the victims. Like in my jurisdiction specifically, my clients are not even allowed to turn around. They have to have their back to the victim. And the idea is that the victims may be intimidated because the defendant is facing them. But at one point in time, I actually saw somebody like picked the podium up and moved it. Lee, you were there.
Yes.
Was that him?
Yeah,
Okay.
that's Steve right there. I want to ask you something else because this is great, Ally. I'm glad that he has this picture up. I want to show you something. So if you look at, so this is Steve. Steve had basically rotated the podium to face. He's the only one that did it. He moved the podium to turn
he's got to be different.
Right behind him. Right. So immediately to his left, by the way, is pretty much behind him and to his left, the way he's facing is where all of the families, the victims' families are at. So in your regards, Kohberger's literally facing the families. Like he can see the families directly. And then what's really weird, and I wanted to get your opinion about this, it seemed to me from this courtroom's layout that right behind Steve Gonzalez is the jury area. And so they had the jury benches, and the jury was all cops. It was like the chief of police, Detective Payne, a bunch of, I just recognized several law enforcement officers in that jury area. That was a weird thing to me because they didn't speak. They weren't part of the public, but they were in the jury area. You got comments on what that's about and why they're there?
We do stuff like that too. It's kind of like the jury box always serves as overflow seating in a really contested sentencing or a high profile case. Lots of times you'll see higher ups from the DA's office or law enforcement. Sometimes politicians will come and slip in. And because it's in front of what we call the bar, which is where the lawyers and the parties to the case are, lots of times that's where people will sit for overflow seating. So that doesn't strike me as odd. But again, all of this is really jurisdiction specific. Different courts, different counties, they all have different habits, and sometimes it's by the judge's preference. But something tells me there was a reason why they moved him kind of off to the side so that the victims could actually have the clearest line of sight to the judge. Because if he turned that podium, it's because he thought, first of all, he wanted everybody to pay attention to what he was doing, because Lord knows that family can't help themselves. It's got to be all about them.
Right.
Something tells me they got him out of the way so that the victims could address the court and so that the court could have a clear line of sight to them without Bryan kind of being in the way. Because as much as it was about him, it really was about the victims, or should be.
I want to interject. I'm sorry, Bertie.
You're good, man. No, go for it.
I want to interject a thing that I observed in the courtroom. I don't know if you ever heard me talk about this before, but I have an attention to detail. One of the weirdest things I saw. So there was federal marshals behind me, and there was a federal marshal over by the jury bench. Anyways, as the families got up, whenever they would get up and walk through the aisle between us, between the public and the family seating, an officer would come and kind of separate the public from the family member, kind of like protecting, make sure nobody did anything weird, right? But one of the family members that came up, I noticed when he came up and started to speak, officers put their hands on their pistols. And I watched him. And when he got done and he left the podium, one of the officers looked at another officers and shrugged, like, I guess nothing's going to happen. Like, they were literally on alert that that particular person was going to do shit. Ben Mogan, I believe.
Now that's odd.
Yeah.
Ally, to your point about the jurisdiction, I understand that.
Yeah.
What about the courtroom etiquette of, like, saying you hope somebody gets raped and there's big D's waiting and that
Oh my God,
the clapping? I mean, and there was not one order, nothing. I mean,
Disgusting.
Yeah.
Lee, did I not text you in real time when that was happening? I was texting Lee. I was like, this is outrageous.
Yeah.
Now, again, yeah, I understand the victims needed to have their moment. They needed to be able to address the court. None of us can possibly imagine what they've gone through. And I don't mean to downplay that at all when I say what I'm about to say. That was the most disgusting display of disrespect for the sanctity of a courtroom setting that I have ever seen. And the fact that the judge did not even say anything was shocking to me. That family, and I'm sorry, I feel like everybody's gonna be like, you're really trashing this family. From what I've seen of them in the media, they are not sophisticated, they are not classy, and they just reiterated all of my suspicions about them when they behaved the way that they did in a court of law. And the fact that no judge, no bailiff, no anybody told them, you can't. This isn't the club, right? Okay, this is a courtroom. You can't. This is not the club. That was just, I was so disgusted by it. I really was. And I felt like it was a distraction. They did a disservice to the other families. Even the sister who everybody talked about did such a great job. It was all about her, and she did it for attention, and everything they do is for attention. And what they're doing is they're detracting from the other families because they're the loudest, most obnoxious, trashiest ones out of all of them. And I just thought that what they did was in very poor taste. It was trashy, and I was shocked that the court didn't intervene. Ask me how I really feel.
Yeah, that's what the Hive is all about. And I mean, I'm not going to tell you what you can or can't say. I love hearing it come from the professionals, because sometimes I think that the people that aren't in that profession, we're looked at as we have no credibility, even though we have manners. We understand what a courtroom should be. So to hear it come from you is validating that it just was very odd. And
I have to say, I'm really bothered by how much. I mean, Steve, somebody pointed this out in the comments, so I just remembered that Steve Gonzalez, I think, dropped the word pedophile as if Kohberger was a pedophile. I'm like, these are not children. These are not. It's like Steve and his entire family is trying to get Kohberger killed, beat up in prison, or whatever. You're going to get the big D. We got a gift for you coming. Everybody's waiting for you, buddy. By the way, he's a snitch to the government. He's a Fed. He's a pedophile, and he's naming everything that a prisoner would want to kick someone's ass for to try to get him roughed up in prison or killed. And I'm thinking to myself, what? I mean, I guess at the end of the day, Steve can't be held accountable for something that happens to when he's inciting that, Ally. I mean, how's that work? He's inciting violence against this guy when he's in prison. Is there anything that can be done, or is that just like, hey, I can't be held accountable for what they do once he gets into prison?
I think it would depend on the circumstances and whether they could actually make a connection between his speech and what he said inciting actual violence versus somebody just doing what often unfortunately happens in prison. Now, I thought he got really close to the line of almost insinuating that he had already had something in the works.
Yes.
It was
Yes.
interesting. So there may be something to that, but beyond just the usual, I hope you rot in hell and I hope you get ass raped in prison, which is essentially what they all said. He made it seem like he had people in places and was about to make something happen.
Yeah, he's talked about having people that he knows inside the system, and they're ready for him. Like that, he's got it arranged.
Yeah.
It's all weird, and this is a little bit of a tinfoil hat thought. I've stated this, but how weird is it? And Ally, you can go into the exact definition of what a victim impact statement is meant for. But how weird is it that the only soundbite that's on the news, it's not anything about a victim impact. It's all the shit talk. It's the F-bombs. It's the whoa. It's the perfect soundbite. It's the only one. I guarantee you, if you have not followed this case and if you did not watch the entire hearing, you're going to see the headlines and it's Bryan Kohberger eviscerated at court. But you want to know the actual sad part about it. Nobody will get to hear any of the other families' victim impact statements because that family alone ate up all of the headlines. They're continuing to eat up the media. And this is where I was asking you, if you want to go into what is a victim impact statement for? Isn't it to help determine the to kind of sway the judge potentially in like how severe the sentence is? Not sway, but you know what I'm saying.
Yeah, I mean, that's part of it. A victim impact statement is part of a victim's rights. Most states have statutes, victims' bills of rights, or they have constitutional provisions written into their state constitutions that give victims certain enumerated rights in the context of a defendant's case. They have a right to notice, they have a right to be present, they have a right to be heard, they have a right to give input. And so that victim impact statement is kind of the culmination of all of those things coming together. It is supposed to be the moment that the victim provides the judge, the prosecutor, and sometimes also directly the defendant some insight into how that crime or that person's actions impacted them and their family in ways that people might not necessarily think of. And yes, it can aid the judge in deciding what type of sentence is appropriate in certain circumstances. And it can also be, like I said earlier, a moment of catharsis for victims to say, this is my closure, this is my opportunity to be heard, especially in the context of a case where there has been no trial. And so that victim has not been able to take the witness stand and testify. That victim impact statement is so important because it's the first time that their voice has been heard. And most of the time there's a no contact order in place between the defendant and the victims and their families. So it can be, except in jurisdictions that actually practice restorative justice, it can be a moment where for the very first time, the victim actually hears directly from the victim or their family. But yes, it does all of those things. And so to your point, what I found, aside from the fact that I thought that the Gonsalves family acted like Jersey Shore comes to Idaho in that courtroom, was the fact that they were such a distraction from the others, and somehow as if their pain is greater or they matter more or what they have to say is more important. Because you're right, every single headline, every single story was just about, oh, sick burn from Kaylee's sister, and oh, did you hear what they said? Well, they were being trashy, and of course that's sexy and people want to hear about it. But what we didn't get to hear was from the other families, and they've hogged the entire spotlight. That is not what a victim impact statement is supposed to do. They wanted their moments of fame. They wanted everyone to look at them. That's what they've always wanted from the beginning.
Well said. And you had mentioned something about the no contact order. I will ask Robin the Redneck's question from the Discord. She said, how hard would it be for one of the family members of the Idaho 4 to get permission to speak with Bryan?
You cut out for a second. Say that one more time.
So Robin the Redneck asks,
yeah,
how hard would it be for one of the family members of the Idaho 4 to get permission to speak with Bryan?
It wouldn't be hard. I would say that it would take agreement between, so if the victim wants it, then the victim's advocate's job is to make sure that he or she facilitates that. The better question would be, would Bryan Kohberger's lawyers allow it? And it would really depend on the context of what they wanted to accomplish. If a victim just wants to vent, or they want to say their piece, lots of times the defense attorney is not going to allow that because it can actually inflame the situation. But if there is some joint attempt at something that looks like restorative justice, then oftentimes the two sides will come together. I've done it. We have, as a standard condition of bond in my state where I practice, crime victims and defendants have a no contact order. They're not allowed to speak to one another. They can't even write a letter. Everything has to go through the victim's advocate. I have gotten around that before in situations where the victim has said, listen, I want to look this person in the eye and tell them that I forgive them. I need to ask a question. I want to say something, or the defendant comes to me and says that. And I've actually had that work out in amazing ways, but it's not very common, but it can happen if both of the parties agree.
even if the state, because I believe, what was it, DA? I saw in the chat, it was like a 99-year no contact order.
Yeah, Hitler issued a no contact for 99
permanent,
years.
permanent restraining order. Now he wouldn't be able to do that. They would have to get an exception, but during the pendency of the case, I think it could be done with consent of both sides.
If I saw Judge Hitler or Bill Thompson walking on this side of the street and there was a golden retriever on this side of the street, I would have way more fun going and petting the golden retriever. I wouldn't be able to go and talk to those two. You know what I'm saying? Like I don't even know what I could possibly say or ask them actually seeing them in person, other than what the hell did we all just watch? And why did you guys just completely, what seems to be, railroad Bryan Kohberger? Why did you allow that in the courtroom? Why, Bill Thompson, why did you fall right back onto the PCA after telling all of us you're going to release new evidence that's never been heard publicly? Why do you allow a victim impact statement to say you snuck up on them in your sleep like a pedophile, when you clearly stated in your plea deal, when you spoke, you said, I want to make it absolutely clear there was no sexual assault or sexual incentive in this crime. How does that, like, what are we doing here? Because don't those victim impact statements do they have to get approved, Ally? Or
typically, yes, which that's
okay.
Part of what surprised me about everything is that normally they are submitted to the victim's advocate's office and the prosecutor will read them. And before court, the prosecutor hands them to the defense attorney. But here's the thing: victim impact statement written out is one thing, and in a really angry victim just speaking off the cuff is a totally different thing, and you can't necessarily control that. So I wonder how much of what they submitted in writing, how much that differed from what actually happened. I bet it's a lot, because I think had they put anyone on notice that they were going to behave in the way that they did, somebody would have probably counseled them that wasn't appropriate.
I wanted to back up and ask you a question, because I ask weird questions about the victim impact statement. The question was asked, I think even by Birdie, isn't that partially to kind of like have the judge weigh their wishes before sentencing? But how often I would imagine a judge already knows how they're going to sentence before they walk in the courtroom. How much is the judge really swayed by something that gets said? I mean, haven't they already pretty much decided what the sentence is going to be before they get in there?
For the most part, I think most judges have, but you also, especially in a case like this, okay, where you have a jurisdiction where one judge follows the case throughout the entire process. It's not like that in every state. In my state, we don't have a judge assigned to every case. You get whatever judge is there that day when you happen to go for a motion hearing or a plea or a sentencing. It might be a different judge every single time. And so in a case like this, yes, he already knew, even if you didn't have the plea agreement, he would already have in his head what he thought was appropriate. But to answer your original question, a victim impact statement can sway the judge, to give less sometimes or more, depending on how the victim behaves, how they emote, what they say. Do they seem genuine? I've seen judges that end up giving less time because they think the victim is full of it, or they think they're acting ridiculous, or the defendant gives a powerful statement and then the victim looks silly. So it can go both ways. But yes, to answer your question, yes.
Yeah.
Now, one of the next slides that I have prepared, Ally, I'm very curious, because I get the jurisdiction. I'm going to look up, as you're explaining this, the Idaho, specifically the Moscow or Ada County, right? DA, that's where this courthouse was. It was Ada
County, yeah.
Yep. So I'm going to go and look that up, see if I can find it. But one of the things that I thought was odd was I posted a TikTok about how, does anybody else think it's weird that during the plea and then the sentencing, and my mind, if you can't tell, Ally, always goes a little bit on the conspiracy side. And I'm like, well, they're not facing, the seal of Idaho. They're not facing the judge. This is an illegitimate court. This is not real. None of it makes sense. All this stuff is fake. We are watching a reality TV show. And then, so again, I say that with the conspiracy tinfoil hat on. And my question, though, for the safety or for the camera angles, it just seems like with courtroom choreography, nothing is by accident. And I looked at all these other high-profile cases that are relatively recent, that are men, that had all of the national media drawn to them with cameras in the room. Every single one of them, and these are either their plea or sentencing hearings, are all, or in OJ's case, the trial, but they're all facing They're all facing. I could only find one other person that was moved to the side, and it was oh shoot, let me go look it up quick. It was somebody who had flipped on the mob back in the day, and his name was and now I can't find it. But anyways, they called it, they were shifting him to a witness position. And it was like a subtle move to let people in the court, law enforcement, the jury, hey, he's one of the good guys now.
Mm.
Have you ever heard anything like that?
No, I haven't. You cropped me out of Alec Murdoch's picture there, Bertie.
Were you in? Oh, I'm
Yeah.
sorry.
No, I'm just teasing you. Yeah, I would say that a lot of times too, it's about the setup of the courtroom. I don't know who designs courtrooms, but I would love to meet whoever they are and smack them upside the head one of these days, because they're just not efficiently laid out, most of them. And most of them are not designed for television or things to be covered on camera. And so I think that in a lot of circumstances, they just do the best that they can. I hear what you're saying. I don't read too much into what they did, other than they probably wanted the victims to be able to address the judge and needed to configure things and to have the cameras have access to various angles and certain people to be separated from others. That's my takeaway from why they did what they did, if I had to guess.
And that makes sense. I just
My question was along that lines is, did they arrange it for, because they were afraid somebody was going to go after Kohberger in the case, and it gave him better security to stick him on the side where they could have officers directly behind him and not have the audience directly where they can jump over the bar and choke him out from behind, kind of thing.
Yep,
But
it happens.
Thank you so much, Sandy, Colorado, for the super sticker. I appreciate that. Well, so to that point, though, that's what I'm saying, DA. Why wouldn't they do that for everybody? I mean, there's a small courtroom. Anybody in that courtroom, a family member, as you said, they put their hands on the pistols when dude went up there. They're aware. They're going to be ready, and they're going to look for it. I mean, I've seen a video, and I showed it on stream, where this dude hops the bar and actually takes out the judge in like a flying Ray Lewis tackle. Right. You know what I'm saying? Like, if somebody wants to get to somebody bad enough, I mean, you would think, because how many people would you say were in that courtroom? Less than 100?
Yeah, probably 100. Yeah, as far as the public goes, yeah, probably 100. Yeah. Oh well, I mean, and the victims' families, yeah.
Yeah. So,
you know, speaking of that, by the way, and I don't know that Ally has a point on this, and maybe I already know the answer to this, but I was really stunned. I was stunned at the sentencing plea. There were marshals, federal marshals, all over the place, in the hallways, all over the place. There was the sheriff's department all over the hallways. There was local police in the hallways. And at the sentencing, I hardly saw any cops. There was 2 marshals in the overflow room. There was a couple of marshals in the courtroom. And I said to myself, what the hell's going on? Where's all the security? And the only thing I can think of is when I went to this plea change, there was other court cases going on. And so there was a full courthouse. There was people, they said at the very beginning, who might be losing their children in court that day, and it was going to be a volatile situation. And so security had been heightened. But I thought to myself, this was going to be a shit show, that somebody might try to kill Kohberger and the thing. And I was surprised at the lack of security. There was hardly any officers there, I thought, compared to I thought that was weird. I don't know. Is that weird, or is that just not weird because the courtroom was emptied and it was just this case today? What do you think, Ally? Is there anything to make of that, or just like one day or another? I don't know. Like,
no, I would imagine that they probably thought that because the public, the parties, and everybody knew what was going to happen at that hearing. In other words, it was kind of a foregone conclusion that people wouldn't necessarily be surprised or hyped up. Obviously, the victims, everybody was going to be emotional, but there wasn't the level of volatility or uncertainty that there might be when you don't know if someone's going to enter a plea or not, or if you don't know what's going to happen at a trial. I would imagine that because this case was being watched by the entire country, that there was a pretty serious security operation in force throughout, and they probably just had different strategies about how they would handle placing people in what they were doing. But I would imagine that there was a very coordinated effort.
You brought up a good point, though. So about the idea of we don't know what's going to happen at one trial versus there was a lot of talk. There was a lot of talk that technically by law, Kohberger could have changed his plea again before sentencing. That up to the moment that he is sentenced, he could change his plea again. So there was people online that are like, do you think Kohberger's going to surprise everybody and bring all the families in and they go, hey, fuck you, I changed my mind again? And so I didn't see that level of concern, even though that could have existed again, right? The possibility could have. I mean, he would have to have that approved by the judge changing his plea and have a good reason for it, I think.
Yeah.
But
I never thought that was going to happen. I heard a lot of people say that, and I was like, that's not going to happen. Yeah.
Yeah.
There was another question from the Discord, and this one, I am very curious to hear your answer on it. Would you ever have one of your clients take a plea deal so that you could find more proof of their innocence? And I'm assuming also there's a lot of talk that Ann Taylor has been setting up the defense for Bryan, that he had ineffective counsel. And I'm just curious, is that something that an attorney would think that far ahead? Not that there's not chess in court and with attorneys, but rather, does that seem, when you hear that, does that seem like a stretch, or does that seem like a reasonable strategy?
The first part seems like a stretch. The second part about her trying to help him with a potential ineffective assistance claim is not a stretch to me. So the first one, having him plead guilty so that she could access more information to plead his innocence, that one's a stretch for me. You know, we say all the time, we tell our clients, I would never advise you to plead guilty to something that you didn't do, ever. I couldn't stand in front of the court because part of the plea colloquy, at least in my jurisdiction, is when the judge turns to me as the lawyer and says, do you agree with your client's decision to plead guilty? And I have to answer yes, Your Honor, or no. He'll say, Ms. Benevento, do you believe that if this case proceeded to trial, that it would be more likely than not that the state would prevail? Yes, Your Honor, or no, Your Honor. So I could not be part of some fraud on the court in that way. So that part, that's why that's a stretch to me. The second part is a little bit more complicated. So in the event that you have a client who goes to trial and doesn't get the outcome that they want, or they end up taking a plea and then later they have a complaint about the sentence or something that happened, it is not totally unusual for a lawyer to say, or to help that client in filing a petition for post-conviction relief, arguing ineffective assistance. Because in circumstances like in Bryan's case, where there is a waiver of appellate rights, you still always retain your right to challenge post-conviction based on ineffective assistance. And so lawyers will often say, you know, I'm trying to help you get a second bite at the apple or a second chance at this case. And if you go ahead and say I was ineffective in X, Y, and Z particulars, I will be happy to testify at that civil hearing, because that's a civil proceeding for post-conviction. I'll be happy to testify at that hearing so that you can hopefully have your petition granted. So the first part of your question seems like a stretch. The second part doesn't seem like a stretch at all, and I'd be surprised if she didn't maybe encourage him to do that.
I have to ask a follow-on question, Ally, because and if you didn't see this, I get it. There was I froze the video. This was during the plea hearing, or when he changed his plea to guilty. Ann Taylor, up to the change of the plea, had been saying over and over again, we're not ready for trial. We're not ready for trial. We need more time. We've got too much discovery. We haven't had time to view the discovery. That was a constant thing going up into sentencing, to the change of the plea. Hippler asked Ann Taylor, and did you, Ann Taylor, have enough time to review the discovery? And he looks up and he gets a micro expression smirk on his face, like he knows damn well she didn't have time for the discovery. She paused, rolled her eyes, and said, yes, Your Honor. And I was like, it was that moment where he knew she has been complaining that she didn't have time. He knew but as I told people, here's the thing: the plea is off the table if anybody says that it isn't fair and everything's done right. So she had to answer yes, or his plea deal was off. So she said, no, you know what? We really didn't have enough time, but go ahead and let him plea. So it was a moment. It was just a weird thing where I saw Hippler look at her like he almost couldn't keep a straight face. Have you had plenty of time to review the discovery? And she's like, yeah. Like she had to, because otherwise the plea would be off, right? So
Yeah, there's a difference, though, between having enough time to view the discovery and having enough time to prepare your defense, because preparing your defense involves more than just reviewing the discovery. It involves consultation with potential expert witnesses, with outside investigators, strategizing, putting those pieces together, you know, dealing with people's schedules. And so, you know, she probably was incredibly frustrated. I mean, God, every single ruling back to back to back to back was not in her favor. She was probably exhausted. Who knows what her conversations with Bryan were at that point. He's probably scared that he's about to get the death penalty. He may have been pressing her to go to the DA's office for a deal. I don't know what type of contentious relationship, if at all, the two of them had. And so, to me, yes, the judge may have smirked because they were making a big deal about not having enough time, but I don't know that that necessarily means that she got up there and lied. She probably had enough time to read it and review it, but probably did not feel like she had sufficient time to put forward the defense that she knew Bryan would need to go up against the DA's case, and especially in the context of the death penalty. She probably felt very hamstrung in that regard, I would imagine.
I have a question that has to do with Hippler at the plea hearing. Can you tell me why a judge would only say a human being after two of the victims and not the other two?
He just probably, so judges use the same script day in and day out, over and over and over and over again. And a lot of them at the beginning, when they first become judges, they read it. You can see them reading from it. And then eventually they come up with their own version of it, and they just do it from memory. And especially when you're repeating things over and over, sometimes they will leave things out. I would imagine that was a mistake on his part, probably just because he was repeating the same thing 4 times.
Let me ask you a question, Ally, as a defense attorney that is going to be not necessarily popular with everybody. Is it a victory? Is it a victory for Ann Taylor to have got the death penalty taken off the table? In other words, is her entire goal to just get it to a point where they had to accept giving him the option because they were in, and so they're at the point that they were saying, yeah, we'll take death penalty off the table. Is that considered? Do you feel as a defense attorney that you've made a victory for your client because at least you saved him from execution, but he is going to get the rest of his life in jail?
It can be. It depends on the circumstances. It depends on what my clients told me. I have a death penalty case going on right now, and I can tell you right now that if the DA came to me tomorrow and said, I'll take the death penalty off the table if your client pleads to life, I'd tell him where to shove it. Not doing it. Client's not doing it. We have a defensible case. We feel strong about it, and I say it's go time. So you can take your offer, and I won't say it on the internet, but I'd tell him what he could do with it. Now, different circumstances, if the client maybe came to me and that we had big problems in our case, serious risk, no viable defense, and felt really bad about the case, and the client was nervous and they didn't like the idea of the risk of 12 strangers in a conservative jurisdiction deciding whether or not he should get the death penalty for the accusation that he committed 4 heinous crimes. Yeah, that can be a huge victory, but I would say that depends on what the client's expectations are, what the client has disclosed to the lawyer, and what conversations the two of them had in terms of strategy. Maybe that's all they wanted from the beginning. I don't know. Right. We're not privy to that. So it can be a victory, but in certain circumstances, I don't think it's a victory at all.
I want to ask a follow-on question because it's related, which is that so one of the things I stated, and people didn't like the wording, was why did the prosecution even offer the option of taking of a plea if they thought they had a slam dunk case? And people tried to correct me and say, well, the prosecution didn't offer it. It was the defense that asked for it. And I'm like, it's the same thing. Like, both sides have to agree to the plea. So if the prosecution says they're willing to take it, are they not essentially making that an offer as one of the options on the table? Because otherwise they could, like you say shove it. We're gonna go for a full conviction. I mean, is there a point where they just decide like it's not worth taking the risk, and so it's a victory for them again to get life in prison without parole? Or does it say anything that they took it off the table when they were so certain that they had a slam dunk case?
I agree.
I don't know that they were so certain that they had a slam dunk case, because what tied those 4 bodies, that crime scene, those people, those murders to Bryan Kohberger, other than that real hinky ancestry DNA evidence, right? Like what did they have? So there's that. And then also, where are people getting it that the defense asked for that? Defense attorneys, we don't make plea offers. That's not how that works. The prosecution makes the first move. They have the discretion. They have the power in that dynamic. Nothing happens without them offering it. We can go and say, hey, I want you to dismiss this case, or I want you to do this, and they can laugh me right out of the courtroom. offers come from the prosecution. So I've heard that online a little bit. I don't know where that narrative is coming from. Maybe the defense hoped for that, but that offer originated from the DA's office with the blessing of the elected district attorney in that jurisdiction.
I'm so glad you said that, because again, I got beat up because they kept saying, well, it was the defense that asked for the plea. And I'm like, I don't, that doesn't make sense to me, first of all. And to follow up what you just said, by the way, and I don't know if you want to riff on it, was the plea deal didn't come in until until Hurwitz, is that his name, came involved, the DA that came involved, and then all of a sudden they're accepting a plea. And I almost wondered, did he come in and say, let's take a plea in this deal and kind of push for that, because he was relatively new at the end in May, I think he came onto the case, and then all of a sudden they had a plea deal in a couple months. But I don't know, the whole thing sounded weird to me, and the point I'm only trying to make is that regardless of who suggested or floated the idea of taking a plea, both sides have to agree on it. And if they thought they had a slam dunk case and were going to be able to execute him because their case was airtight, why would they have let that even be an option of taking it off the table? I don't know.
Right.
And take it off the table without having to tell you how you did it, where the murder weapon is, why you did it. And I understand that maybe that's like, you don't have to. And
well, you can't. You can't.
So,
yeah,
well,
they
can't
cannot require
it.
that. Mm-mm.
But I guess what I'm saying too is like, going to the plea deal, there's so many things that are odd about it. I think you asked where the narrative was coming. I think Steve G crossing the street to go back to that family saying, we knew when they booked their flights. It's like, it made it seem like they were aware of it. Or like, is there a situation where the prosecutor would tell the defense first before notifying the victims' families they're considering a plea? Okay, thank you.
No. Not in any universe that like, and they really had to backpedal on the narrative that they were first trying to spit to the world, which was, nobody called us, we didn't know anything about this, nobody consulted with us. BS. No way. No way.
Yeah.
And back to the original point of, if they thought they had a slam dunk case, I tell people all the time, prosecutors, DAs are politicians. They are elected officials. They are elected to do a job. And if they don't do that job, they have to answer to the general public. They have to answer to their bosses, who are the people who elected them. If you are going to come at someone in a case that has the eyes of the nation and the world on it, and you are swinging and you are trying to get the death penalty, what is a bigger failure? What is a bigger fall on your face than going to trial and either losing and or not actually getting the death penalty? So don't think for 1 second that didn't contribute to their decision to make an offer for what they thought was a sure thing, which is, I'm getting excited. I'm Italian. I talk with my hands. A sure thing, which is securing a conviction and ensuring that Bryan Kohberger spent the rest of his life in prison without having to go through the expense in terms of personnel and budget and everything else of a very public trial. I think that was a big part of it. I think it was not probably an easy decision, but again, they don't have a case of a murder that's on video, or that somebody is, the victim's blood is literally all over Bryan Kohberger's hands, or he's caught with a gun in his hand. Like, they don't have any of that. They have a very
circumstantial
case. And so that, together with the stakes being as high as they are with everyone watching them and the potential for them to fail, I think that's the reason. And also, sometimes victims don't want to testify. Witnesses don't want to testify. We don't get to hear about all of that. We don't get to hear that part. Everybody's like, oh my God, where'd this plea come from? It was probably lots of conversations going on in that DA's office.
Well, we know that it was possibly going on for a month beforehand, because how weird is it that Bryan Kohberger signs his plea, and with a pen, he crosses out June, and somebody hand writes July. Not notarized, not signed next to it, no initials. This, again, it's a death penalty case. Wouldn't you think that a plea deal would not have June on it, or are they just letting anybody make the corrections as they sign it? Because that seems odd.
Who knows?
I was stunned. Going back to something Ally said, I was stunned when Bill Thompson literally, in the accepting of the plea, says, we can't place Bryan Kohberger in the house. We can tell you his phone was near the house, but we can't place Bryan Kohberger in the house. And then the press conference after the sentencing, the press says, hey, you said at the very beginning this was a targeted attack. Could you tell us now who was targeted? you know, we really wanted to make a connection between Bryan Kohberger and anybody in the house, but we couldn't. I mean, literally, we can't place him in the house. We really wanted to find some kind of connection. There was no connection. Now, granted, to play devil's advocates with the other side of the position, sometimes people just picked a random house and went and did it for a thrill kill. It could have been something like that. So maybe there is no connection. But for them to say, I can't place Bryan Kohberger in the house. We have no definitive proof that he was there. We just have a phone that might have been close to the house or pinging off the cell tower that services the house. It's circumstantial evidence. We wanted to make a connection between him and the victims, and we can't find any connection whatsoever. But hey, we had him dead to rights. My ass. I think you had a weak case. But,
Yeah.
Well, and so here, I'm going to take us down screen. And Ally, if you got your computer pulled up, I'm going to put this full screen so you can see this. I want to point this out. This is an article from the New York Times. This is the most deceptive headline, which I don't know if anybody's surprised, but they make it sound like they're about to dispel baseless rumors of internet conspiracy theorists. It's all about Bill Thompson. Okay. This is insane. And I did a video ranting on this. So they just talked about what DA said there with it was one of opportunity. We simply don't know the answer to that. But there's a part that I wanted to ask your questions on. Mr. Thompson said that harmful. Hang on. It's about the Mad Greek. They pretty much address how he never knew him at all. And it's just so interesting. So I just find this odd that he's saying it's even possible he did not select the house as his target until he entered it just before 4 a.m. I think about a jury's mind. So you're to tell me a guy's going to go commit his first ever quadruple homicide with a knife at a party house where he doesn't know the layout, and then he gets in and out and kills them all within 7 minutes with no blood, not seen on camera, no screams. And Bill Thompson, the lead prosecutor in Latah County, where the killings happened, said investigators hunted extensively to establish a prior connection between Mr. Kohberger and the 4 students, something to suggest they were targeted. But if there was a connection, it remains a mystery, he said. It is possible that Mr. Kohberger's attack was one of opportunity. We simply don't know the answer to that. And human nature is we would like to know the answer, an explanation for everything. We want everything to make sense, but what we're dealing with doesn't make sense. And he didn't, detail his motives. And so anyways, you get the point. I feel a full-on backpedal coming from the prosecutors. I think people are going to start demanding answers when people actually start reading these police documents. And that takes me into my next point. In this situation, what type of evidence would constitute as new evidence? There's the obvious ones like alibi.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, like, is retesting of DNA one? Is it timeline? Mm-hmm. How hard is it to get new evidence really submitted in this situation?
It's hard. And new evidence can be anything that was not known to the parties or in existence at the time. So if somebody, surfaces in prison, they get to jail and their DNA is tested, and lo and behold, their DNA matches the DNA under some crime victim's fingernails, and nobody knew about this beforehand, or they confess to someone, or some other piece of evidence is found that was not known to the parties at the time, and it comes to their attention, then that can be brought up. So there's no limitation on what it can be. It is a rare circumstance where somebody gets that appellate opportunity based on new evidence, but it can happen.
Ally, there was a question from you from the chat. If you can't see it from there, I'll read it to you. It says, Ally, why would they not identify all of the DNA at the crime scene? Thank you, Birdie and guests. So informative.
I think they're talking about the blood, the extra blood that was found,
Yes.
the male DNA blood on the banister inside and the bloody glove outside the crime scene, right?
Well,
Yeah.
And did you see this, DA? Look at this comment.
Oh yeah. But I got to hear Ally's response about about those extra DNA samples that were there.
They probably didn't have anything to compare it to. They can run it through the database, but if somebody has never been arrested and they're not in NCIC and they don't have a DNA sample to compare it to,
Well,
Then-
so let me
Bryan
follow the
Kohberger.
logic on that, right? So, right, they got a buccal swab on Bryan Kohberger at some point. Can't they go back to the evidence glove that has blood on it and go, hey, by the way, we went back and double checked, and sure enough, it's Bryan Kohberger's blood on that glove. Like,
Did
I
they
don't know.
not? Did they not test it against Bryan Kohberger and
As far
exclude
as I
him as
know-
a contributor?
No, as far as I know, literally, this was the answer. And correct me if I'm wrong. It made me blow my mind. Their answer was there was no reason to test the other DNA because we already knew who it was. We had his DNA off the knife sheath. So there was no reason to test the other blood. I said, are you fucking kidding me? Because if you could have had him 3 different ways, hey, by the way, he left blood on the banister. And by the way, he also left. That didn't fly with me. But that was the answer I heard.
What's the phrase? That doesn't pass the smell test for me. Sorry. No. Oh no, I don't want a way to make my case stronger. What? Get out of here.
Who would do that?
And Ally, at what point is the state not screaming from the rooftops in the most high-profile murder case with all this media? Look at this evidence; it is dead to rights. And I also want to know, like Bryan, if he appeals it and all this stuff. So one of the things that Steve G had said in his victim impact statement was like, "We had your DNA within hours." Now, wouldn't that be a red flag as a defense attorney when you're like, hold on. So how is that possible? We've never heard that. Like, I don't think anybody's ever heard that. And then my other question is, when in your career have you ever heard of or seen somebody whose DNA for a quadruple murder is found within hours and then they're free for 30 days to drive around and cross state lines? What?
Yeah.
Not only go ahead. Sorry, Ally. Go ahead.
Sorry, Lee. Go ahead. No, you're good.
Oh, you're the more important person. You should talk.
No, I'm just trying to figure out what they meant by that comment. Like, we had your DNA within hours, but did they know it was his? Like, you had somebody's DNA.
This is what bothered me even more. What I heard Steve Gonzalez say, and this is the $1 million thing that freaked my ass out. He said on an interview, we knew early on, very early, about the knife sheath, the DNA, and the CODIS hit. And I said, CODIS hit? Originally, you told us there was no hit in CODIS because Bryan Kohberger wasn't in CODIS. So how could you know early on? And he listed it with the DNA and the snap. We know about the knife sheath, the DNA on it, and the CODIS hit. And I lost my mind. I'm like, what fucking CODIS hit? There was no CODIS hit. You said Kohberger wasn't in CODIS, and you had to develop a profile through this sneaky IgG path to get to his. I mean, I don't understand the CODIS hit comment either. Steve just makes stuff up.
But that was Consalve's comment, right?
Yes.
He's an idiot. I'm sorry. I said it, guys. Okay. Like, he's an idiot. I don't care about anything he says. He wants attention and he's a moron. Sorry. I cannot, I cannot be neutral.
No, that's good. That's what I'd want in a defense attorney. I'd want somebody calling out the bullshit. And I think that how you say it is, again, coming from a place of credibility, which, by the way, I did see also an article that you were voted top 5% of lawyers in South Carolina this year. Congratulations on that. That's incredible.
Thank you.
That's
Appreciate
awesome.
that.
Did I really crop you out of the Murdow picture? Because I'm very sorry.
You did.
Oh, damn it. I'll go back. Hang on. I can edit it. I'm going to see if you're still in there. I'm so sorry.
It may not have been that day or that angle, but I was always pretty much like right behind his shoulder.
Are you comfortable telling people why you were in the courtroom for that one?
Oh, sure. Yeah. So I know the Murdochs. I know the family very well. I knew Maggie, I knew Paul, I know Alec, I know Buster. The bar in South Carolina is pretty small, but I actually I represented 2 of the witnesses in that trial. One being Alec's best friend from law school, who's also a lawyer here. Everybody will remember him, Chris Wilson. It's public information. And then Forge Consulting, who was the financial entity that Alec Murdoch pretended to be when he was funneling all the money that he stole. I represented the legitimate financial entity, Forge Consulting, and its CEO, Michael Gunn. And so I was there through most of that trial. And
That's
unfortunately found myself right behind Alec Murdoch's shoulder in a lot of those pictures.
That's not you, is it?
No, that's Carly Jewell. Shout out to my girl Carly. She's awesome.
He's scouring the internet.
Now I feel like a dick.
Bernie, I'll find you one. It was the day of opening statements was the funniest one because the courtroom was empty for some reason, and it was like Alec in one corner and then just Ally in a bright ass red suit right behind him. It was terrible. I was like, who sat me here?
Now I'm looking for red suits in the audience every time he shows a picture. But
Well, and so one of the other questions is, Have you ever dealt with police framing somebody?
Oh, I have felt like it. Yeah. I don't
Yeah.
know that I could ever prove it, but I have definitely felt. So here's the thing, like framing is that's like such a sexy way of saying that police get blindness sometimes, and it's that confirmation bias of deciding who is a convenient suspect and then kind of just like making all of the evidence fit the conclusion that they came to before they did a proper investigation. I have dealt with cases involving police misconduct, mishandling of evidence. So all of those things can fall under the category of framing. It just doesn't, in real life, it doesn't translate as sexy sounding as framing. But yes, police behaving badly. I see that lots.
And so Janet had asked Ally, "Do you think he did it?" I don't know if they're referring to the Murdoch case or Bryan Kohberger case.
Alec?
Yeah.
No, I've got a whole. Ooh, you want to talk about conspiracy theories? I'm gonna have to pour me a tequila, and we'll have to make this a totally separate episode.
Let's do it. I'll wear my tinfoil
theory.
hat. I'll mail you one. We can sit in the hive with our tinfoil hats up. Well, actually, you want to know what? We'll go get these for that episode.
Oh
Ally.
yeah.
We can rock those.
That's very fancy.
And then somebody else had just asked, have you ever seen, like in this instance, a crime scene being torn down prior?
That was crazy.
Okay, I thought so too. I think a lot of people think so.
I don't like that. I love taking a jury to the crime scene. There is no substitute for a good old-fashioned trial field trip. And to me, all right, here we go. Ally's going to bring out her conspiracy theorist. I think that if I'm the prosecutor and I don't feel so good about my case, or there's something that doesn't quite make sense that a jury might be able to put 2 and 2 together if they actually walked the scene, I want that house gone, because I want them to be able to see my narrative and see things my way and not see it for themselves. If I'm the defense attorney, I'm fighting that. I'm shocked that they tore that house down. I really am. I've never heard of such a thing. And I know that their excuse was probably, well, we got all of the evidence out of it that we needed, but there's just no substitute for a jury being able to actually walk through the place where everything happened. I mean, you can listen to somebody tell a story about this room was here, this was there, and you see those diagrams. There's no substitute for them walking through that courtroom.
I've got to ask you a follow-on question. I saw, as I'm going through the police documents, there was a non-disclosure agreement between the remediation company that tore the house down and either Moscow PD or the university. And I thought to myself, what are the conditions? How long is the NDA? Because is it forever? Meaning that even after the gag order is lifted, the remediation company can't tell you anything about what they found in the house when they tore it down or why it was being torn down. Like there's a non-disclosure to talk about what they found or what they did or the discussions involving tearing the house down. And I thought that's bullshit, because now even with the gag order lifted, we still won't know what they did because it's under a non-disclosure agreement.
Yeah, that's a separate contract. So yeah, it could outlast the lifting of the order for sure.
Allie, now you got me excited for my tinfoil hat. I'm going to show you something and I want your thoughts on it.
Please retrieve your nearest tinfoil hat. Place hat firmly on your head. Prepare yourself.
So I prepared that so that everybody knows this is a conspiracy. I made this video and we've all seen the blood dripping. Okay? I don't know if you've seen that headline.
Yeah,
now, there's a pipe above it. People have speculated if it's rust or if it's not rust. It clicked for me like 3 days ago when I made this. Okay. So how weird is this? On Friday, the 24th, you can see the house is all boarded up, right? Fences are around it, crime scene tape. Most of the time, if not always, you could see the front of the cop car sitting here. They had a patrol person. Now, this would mean, and by the way, the bodies have been removed. All of the victims' belongings have been removed. And this is now 2+ months after the murders. Tell me, if that was really blood, what crime scene cleanup company worth their license would ever leave blood on the outside of the house, especially when they're making an argument to tear down the crime scene for the reasons of it's going to be a spectacle on campus. And if that was blood, tell me what OSHA violation they're not involved in, and why would are we going to put it past the news that they wouldn't use that just for narratives? And I went, and I have no reason to believe that this disaster relief company had it removed in the summertime. And I went and looked up their policies. They abide by all of them, and they are certified, and it is licensing. So what are your thoughts on that as far as like, you know, it just seems odd. Like, could you argue like there was a false narrative made around the crime scene by seeing something like that if you could prove? And people say, oh, it was Xana or Ethan's blood. It's like, okay, like why would they leave it there then? Isn't that a biohazard?
I mean, I guess it could be, but they probably swabbed it and collected their samples that they needed and got photographs and probably walked through with video. They probably got everything that they needed and processed the scene completely. And so at that point in time, I don't know that they have to scrub the rest away, but I mean, I see what you're saying, but you know, they don't, in any crime scene, you don't take everything with you. You just take what you need. You process the scene in accordance with your training, or they're supposed to, and then the rest is destroyed or left. And sometimes they leave it for people to clean up themselves. Like, you know, had the owner of that house wanted to keep the house or re-rent it out, they could have given it back to him.
I mean, I realize a piece of yellow ribbon is not going to keep somebody out of a crime scene, but I'm assuming there's actually a law that you violate if you cross a crime scene law. Right? Probably some kind of code of Idaho that if you cross a crime scene, tape and so where I'm going with that is the counter is, well, it's not a biohazard because the public's not supposed to go past the yellow line. Yeah. But a yellow line of tape isn't going to keep anybody out. But
and the fence isn't bolted down. And I'm going to go on a little bit of a rant here, because if I'm one of those victims' parents, I'm going to say, no, you're going to get your ass back to that crime scene. You're going to scrub the blood off of it. I don't want people taking pictures of it. You're going to either bolt a piece of wood over it and do it that way. And here's the other part. This is where my tinfoil hat comes in. Outside of them not cleaning it up when they originally went to the crime scene and bolted and shut down everything, you know damn well that the news, that would have been front page news of any company scrubbing blood off of the outside of the house. And not one time did you ever see anybody go there and really examine it. You see people standing off to the side. I find that so odd that everything is so secretive about it. They put tarps over the house for what they take in, what they take out. You have law enforcement. When have you ever seen the local cops move out victims' belongings and survivors' belongings? That's always on the victims' families most times to get the cleanup set and move them out, correct?
Not the cleanup. Usually crime scene will come in and do that. And we don't know. Maybe they spoke with the victims' families and they asked if it was okay for them to remove it. And sometimes they need to move things or remove things and put them in storage so that they can process in greater detail, you know, something in the house. You know, if there was, college kids are messy. If there's stuff all over the place and they need to process the scene, they're going to do that step by step. They're going to kind of do, I talk to juries about it as in like wide angle lens all the way down to zoom lens. You're going to do your big picture stuff first. You're going to take your photos, you're going to take your video, you're going to leave things exactly as it is. And then you're going to begin to like tighten that lens to get down to smaller and smaller things, and more at a more granular level. And so if there's just shit everywhere, then sometimes you've got to get that stuff out of the way, and you have to be very methodical in the way that you process a crime scene. So yeah, I don't know. I mean, I don't know the answer. I don't know how we can answer that because we don't know what type of communication was going on between law enforcement, the cleanup crew, the victims' families. I don't know.
And you would assume as a defense attorney, if that's going to happen, you're assuming that they're taking all precautions to preserve any potential evidence in that, and that none of them wore gloves. None of them have booties on. None of them have hairnets. They're tracking snow and dirt right inside the house. They're putting it in the back of a pickup truck, for God's sakes. Yeah. A U-Haul. What?
It's like the Karen Reed Red Solo Cup evidence collection system in the shop and go bag. Like, it's just like, what are you doing? Come on.
Yes.
Hey, John Wayne Bobbitt's penis was stuck in a hot dog box because that's all they had on him at the time. No shit. So I guess that kind of stuff won't happen.
Wait, hang on. What?
Do you remember Bobbitt?
Lorena
Bobbitt chopped off her husband's dick, threw it out the window.
He's too young.
He's too young. He's too young. Oh my gosh.
Now that you've said it, I've heard of it.
He doesn't remember
Lorena Bobbitt. Literally, the police officers couldn't find something to collect it in, so they grabbed a hot dog box from like 7-Eleven and put his dick in it. Anyways, random trivia from the pipeline from me. I do have a legal question for Ally, by the way, though. We're on a ticking time clock of some that people are watching. I lost Birdie.
He's still thinking about the guy's dick in the hot dog box. That's why.
Wait a minute. Bertie, he did a porn afterwards.
I mean,
It's Bobbit Uncut. He did a porn.
oh my God. I
Yeah.
was gonna say I'd be like offended. Like, is it in like a jumbo Frank box? Like, what's the label on this box at this point?
I
for
mean,
the hot
Definitely.
dogs? Like,
This has gone sideways. Let me get back to a legal question.
Thank God we're not on TikTok. We'd all be kicked off.
Yeah.
right
Okay,
now.
that'll all be done. So there's a ticking time clock that people are talking about, which is after sentencing, Kohberger had 42 days to file an appeal of some kind, and that was his last shot. We're still within this window. Do you know any insight into this appeal window that he has? Do you anticipate that's going to happen, or is it just going to be this is it, and there's nothing going to be coming surprising in the next 30-something days?
Yeah, I'd be surprised if we saw anything. Happy to be wrong about that, but I'd be surprised.
would new evidence be considered if police officers' body cams were off by an hour and they figured that out? They could prove that these body cams were off, like their timestamps were off in the upper corner.
Why? My question would be, why would the defense attorney have not figured that out by now?
Well, there's
Yeah,
a lot of
good
shit that they haven't figured out. Like there's footage that's been released where the and it could just be the publicly released stuff that they purposely manipulated. So actually, let me ask you that. If they quote unquote leak stuff, have you seen a case where video evidence has been manipulated as a leak to the public, but behind court, like in the courtroom, it's not? So they're seeing the real stuff, but then people in the public are like, this is way wrong. This is way off. Because I could totally see that happening in this case.
I have seen, so I do a good bit of civil rights work as well. And so I have a lot of people who are shot, beat up, killed by police. And what you will see in an effort to control the public narrative in those type situations is that when law enforcement releases footage, they're very strategic about it, about cutting it from context or snipping it or cropping it in a certain way. And then you get the whole video and you're like, okay, that's not exactly the way that you presented it. But like blatantly manipulating or changing things that I have never been able to kind of prove that has been an experience in any of my cases, but 100%, especially in civil rights cases or any type of criminal case that has a component of excessive force or anything like that, I do see that they are very intentional in the way that they crop and present videos when they release them to the public.
Yeah. So Ally and DA, if
Yeah.
you're cool with this too, HIVE, and to everybody in DA's chat, let's do like 3 to 5 kind of rapid fire questions here to wrap this stream up. And Ally, you can go in.
He froze.
You're frozen.
Yeah, he has a freeze from time to time, right in the middle of a sentence.
Yep, frozen.
You're back.
My FBI agent is listening in. I
It's
assume.
fine. Lee
But,
went to go get the hot dog box. We'll be right back.
What? Hey, what hot dog box, Lee? What's
Is it going to have to be a big Frank, or is it anyways?
Is it the little the Weenie Hut Juniors or something?
You don't need. Yeah, I'm out. I can't do this. I'm out.
Gerber graduates.
Little Smokies jar. I can't do this. I'm on. Stop it. Get back.
Sorry,
get back to
I
the show.
started it.
Okay, my bad.
Rapid fire.
All right,
I'm
rapid
gonna
fire
get
questions.
kicked off of here.
Yeah. Here we go. Rapid fire.
Okay.
Somebody said. And also keep in mind that Ally, while she knows about this case, I don't know if you're gonna know like specific people per se. Like, would you know anything about like Scott Green, Mr. Green?
I
Okay.
depend on Lee for all of my info.
Okay. Here's a good one. Were you shocked that Ally, were you shocked that AT took the plea deal?
AT.
And Taylor.
And Taylor.
Bryan.
Oh, sorry. No. I
Okay.
was shocked. Well, okay, hold on. I was surprised when it happened. It felt to the outside observer like it came from out of nowhere, but knowing what I know about cases and how they work and plea negotiations, I'm sure it wasn't out of nowhere. I really thought this case was going to be a trial. But in retrospect, looking back, it's because we were not privy to a lot of the information. And so we were kind of outside while everything was going on inside. And so we thought the trial was happening the whole time. And so in that regard, I was a little surprised. But I'm not surprised that in a death penalty case, a defendant generally takes a plea to life in prison to avoid the death penalty. That part's not surprising.
Okay.
How's that for an answer?
That's a great answer.
Okay.
Have you ever had a case with multiple perps with law enforcement involved?
All the time.
All right. Do you think he's going to win the appeal if he does it?
Depends what his basis for an appeal is. I mean, if he has a good appealable issue, it would depend, what issue he raises. Is it ineffective assistance? If so, what's it based on? Is there new evidence? If so, what is it? It depends on the basis. I mean, he waived his right to a traditional, like a direct appeal, and he pled guilty. So, you don't have as many issues when you don't go through a trial.
Do you think it's a little bit sus that there was any footage of the lack of photos of the bodies or crime scene photos leaked or any evidence of them actually being removed from the scene?
Are we saying that doesn't exist at all, or just that we haven't seen it or heard about it?
Never seen it.
Never seen it.
Well, that part's not unusual. If there was to be a trial and they didn't show that or have that, or that wasn't part of the discovery material, that would be surprising, sort of, to me. I don't necessarily always get video footage of bodies being removed from the scene, but I will get things like autopsy photos and body worn camera footage, and other video footage of processing the crime scene. And so if those sorts of things did not exist in the discovery file, I would be very surprised. I would say that is unusual. It would not necessarily be per se unusual to not see that in a trial. Lots of times there will be motions in limine prior to the case getting started about no gory, bloody, inflammatory images being shown to the jury. But if it didn't exist at all, yeah, that's weird.
I have to ask you, before I forget, I want to ask you a rapid fire question, if you will, because it's a question everyone's asking me. If he didn't do it, why the hell would anybody plead guilty? So is there ever a time when someone pleads guilty to something that they didn't do for some other reason? Do you think that happens? And tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, I think that happens. I think that's especially true in death penalty cases. There are no higher stakes than we might kill your ass if you get found guilty. So to avoid that, and people are scared and they don't want to take the risk, yes, that happens. Now, again, as a lawyer, would I ever advise someone to plead guilty to something they didn't do? Absolutely not. But I'm not the one that's got to go out the back door and serve life in prison or get the firing squad. So I have to respect my client's decision. I will counsel him. I will answer his questions. I will tell him what I think. I will advise him. I will encourage him. But at the end of the day, the client's the boss. And so if he maintained his innocence and said, I didn't do this, but I'm going to say that I did so that I don't get the firing squad.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
what
happens.
What do they call that? An Alford?
An Alford plea. Yeah, but he didn't give an Alford plea. He
Which
just
is
straight up pled
essentially,
guilty.
Can you explain that a little bit?
Sure. So an Alford plea is essentially, Alford is named after a case out of North Carolina. That's why we call it an Alford plea. It's what we commonly refer to as a no contest plea, meaning I am not contesting the facts, but I am also not pleading guilty. And what that means is I believe that if I were to go to trial, that it is more likely than not that the state would prevail against me. And so because of that risk, I'm not going to say I did it, but I'm going to say you probably got me in terms of trial. And I'm going to say I will not contest the allegations. And the practical effect or the impact of that is that the court treats that the same as a guilty plea. You are still found responsible and you are still sentenced the same way that you would be had you pled guilty. In a guilty plea, you are actually accepting responsibility and admitting to the factual basis for that plea. You are saying, yes, I did in fact kill those 4 people, versus I'm not going to contest it one way or the other. Hope that makes sense.
No, that was a great explanation. Thank you.
And it's to be honest with you, it was one of the first things I asked Ally, because when Bill Thompson said at the press conference, up to the very last minute, Bryan Kohberger and his defense team has maintained that he was factually innocent. And I was like, why are you using the phrase factually innocent? And so my first thought was, before I thought it through, was ask Ally, is that an Alford plea? But then she quickly clarified, at the point that they ask him, are you admitting guilt because you are guilty? And he said, yes. It kind of took that whole Alford plea right off the table. Like he's saying, yeah, I did it. It's not like he's saying you're going to convict me whether I'm guilty or not. So I'm just going to say you got me. It was he actually said, yeah, I did it. And that took the Alford plea off.
This will be a good one to end on, Ally. And thank you so much for your time.
Of course. Yeah. Thank you guys.
So what's your opinion on Ann Taylor filing alternate perpetrators and then taking a plea within a week? Is that a strategic move? Because I do wonder if the alt perps that she filed were to show, because they said, oh, it's not overwhelming evidence, but it was right in line to the same amount of evidence that Bryan Kohberger was being kind of found circumstantially guilty with. Have you ever seen anything like that play out before?
Sure. I think she was just doing her job. Our job as a defense attorney is to hold the state to its burden, right? They have to prove each and every element of the offense beyond a reasonable doubt. If they can't do that, it's our job to point that out. And part of how we point that out is by raising other possibilities. If we have evidence that somebody else may have been involved. Now, you have to be careful with that because a lot of courts won't allow what's called evidence of third-party guilt unless you can point to a specific person. I don't want to necessarily go down that rabbit hole, but I think Ann Taylor was doing her job. She was doing her due diligence. She was raising every issue. She was turning over every stone. And against the backdrop of her doing her job, plea negotiations are going on. Plea negotiations start in a case and can last for months or longer. And so I think that the train towards trial doesn't necessarily stop. You have to continue to operate as though the case is going to go to trial, and you're going to do everything that you need to do for your client. But at the same time, you can still, in the background, be engaging in meaningful plea negotiations. And it seems like that's exactly what happened. And so, yes, it was a tight timeline between her getting her butt kicked on every single motion she was making in the case, and then all of a sudden he's pleading guilty. But I would imagine that wasn't an all of a sudden. It just seemed like an all of a sudden to us because we weren't privy to everything that was going on.
Yeah,
I want to comment, and I know Bertie wants to wrap up, but I want to comment.
No, you're good.
Yeah,
You're good.
The process that I remember how it played out, and I could be getting it wrong, was relatively recently that Ann Taylor said, hey, by the way, we have alternative suspects, but we haven't had time to fully develop them. We've got some new leads that we hadn't seen in the discovery. Now we're seeing it. We want to have time. Hippler essentially said, no, you don't have time. We're going to trial. However, I'll give you leeway to interrogate police officers on the stand. And if you can get them to open up that line of questioning, you can bring in possibly the idea that there was alternative suspects. Mm-hmm. Bill Thompson then said, this was his wording that I remember, when Ann Taylor realized she was not going to be allowed to bring in the idea of alternative suspects, that's when she wanted the plea. So I was like, it's like the judge told her, we won't allow you to bring up alternative suspects. And literally, and I hate to beat this to death, but literally one of his arguments were, like 3 of her alternative suspects were alternative suspects that lived within walking distance of the house. And Hippler said, we know the killer arrived in a car, so it couldn't be one of those. So that's dumb. No, we're not going to accept that. I'm like, that's the dumbest way to rule out an alternative suspect I've ever heard, because we know the killer arrived in a car. It couldn't have been somebody who lived next door. But anyways, that's my rant for that shit. But
so, Ally, I lied. I lied. Not under oath, but I did lie there. I said it was going to be the last question, and that was such a corny joke. You're probably like, did this guy just say that? Sorry. So I just actually asked HIVE, and if you'd be willing to come back and give us your Murdow synopsis, I would love to have you back on to do that. All the ones that you're seeing in the HIVE are from people saying they would tune in for that. So if you're willing to do that, I would love to have you.
Sure. And within the confines of what I can and can't talk about, happy to do it. Yeah.
Awesome. And Chantelly Lace she has the coolest nickname, or the username. It's Chantelly Lace with the RBF. And if you say it fast, like Chantelly Lace with the resting bitch face, isn't that good? It's my favorite one. And,
I too have resting bitch face, or so I'm told.
It's probably helpful as a defense attorney sometimes, I'm sure.
Maybe.
Intimidation, maybe?
Yeah, I don't know. I think it's just my face.
Focus, Bertie, focus. Okay. So, anyways, does double jeopardy ever happen?
What do you mean by that question?
Like, that movie of like where that wife gets out and actually goes and kills her husband after being convicted of like double jeopardy in court, right? Is that a real law where you can't be convicted
of committing
the same crime?
Constitution.
Right. Yeah. So does it ever play out in real life? Have you ever seen it?
Yeah, I mean, it would never it shouldn't get to the point where somebody's actually in court answering for a case they've already been adjudicated for. The cops shouldn't arrest somebody for something twice. So you're not going to see it actually play out where somebody is arrested, charged, goes to trial, and wait, hold on, we've been here before. Someone's been adjudicated in a case, they cannot be tried again for the same case.
And that is applicable to only some crimes. Like you can't go and rob the same store with the same weapon when the same guy's working and then have it be double jeopardy.
Well, that would be a separate crime if you did it twice.
Crime.
Yeah, if you did it twice. But so the simplest example would be if Bryan Kohberger went to trial and he was found not guilty of murdering those 4 kids, the state couldn't try again. They can't say, "Oh, damn, we need a mulligan," right? Like let's have a do-over. We've got some more evidence we want to bring. They don't get to do that. Now, the flip side to that is if Bryan Kohberger is found guilty and he wins his right to appeal, then his conviction is vacated and then he can be retried. He gets a second opportunity, but it can never happen in reverse. It can't be that the state gets a second bite once a person is found not guilty. That's a way oversimplification, but that's a simpler example.
And so what you're saying is the weight is on the defense, right? So I think that's a way of saying it. So I found it interesting that you just said that, because again, if new evidence comes out, then Bryan Kohberger, if there new evidence comes out that says that he couldn't have done it, he could get his right to a new trial. But if he could
petition for it. Yeah, it doesn't mean the court would grant it.
Right, I should say not a right, but right. But the opposite can't happen, right? So if he had been found not guilty after a trial, they couldn't come up in the prosecution and say, "Hey, we have brand new evidence that says he is the guy. Let's try him again." They couldn't.
Correct.
It's interesting. Yeah.
Yep.
So I have 2 theories, and I think it's going to be one or the other of what we see. Bryan Kohberger is either going to not file for an appeal. People are going to lose their shit. Their heads are going to explode. And then he'll be mysteriously killed in prison, never to be seen or heard from again, and possibly in witness protection. Okay. That's one theory. The other theory that I have is I wonder, and I do predict that there's almost as equal of a chance of this, that there's going to be exculpatory evidence that comes out while waiting in the next 38 days for him to file the plea. I truly believe there's a real chance for that to happen if that body cam footage. The reason why I asked that, Ally, just to give you a quick 30-second breakdown, and for anybody that hasn't heard this yet, everybody's been trying to line up the Linda Lane footage and the other security camera footage to things that you see. You can correlate when cars are pulling on or into the King Road area when they're leaving. You can hear things, but then you can never tie it to the body cam footage on the band field. That's why I asked, because somebody had noticed that the body cam footage seems to be behind by an hour and some change, or it's behind. Okay, is all I'm saying. And then when you get it to the right time, it would line up perfectly, and it would actually have what they call suspect vehicle 1 spotted at the scene of the crime at the times they did. I'm not even BSing you. It would line up perfectly with it being the plain clothed officers who were looking for intoxicated college kids doing their same patrol route that entire night. And Bryan Kohberger, that's not Bryan Kohberger's car. Would that be enough if that's proven, is that something that would honestly have a real shot at getting Bryan off the hook? If what they convicted him on was his vehicle seen there, but it comes out it's actually unmarked police cars?
That would be tricky because the evidence would have been in existence at the time of trial, and the defense could have and should have hired an investigator or figured that out. But it depends on the circumstances of how that would happen. But I would say it would be really tricky if it was evidence in the possession of the prosecution and the defense at the time, and somebody just didn't interpret the evidence properly. That's tricky. That's tricky. Not a straightforward answer to that.
So Bryan could be fully cooked because that evidence was available to his defense team and they didn't catch it.
Well, he might, if they didn't catch it and they should have, that could be ineffective assistance.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So might be on a different ground.
So that could be a third option then.
Could be.
Well, we'll probably learn everything in about 7 years in a Netflix documentary, y'all. So,
Maybe.
anyways, DA, Ally Benevento, as always, it is a pleasure. Hive, you guys rock. Thank you so much for the participation and for asking the questions. Ally, I will work with DA and Devil's Advocates. I'd love to have you on too for that Murdaugh one if you know anything about that case. If not, you're not invited. Take your ball and go home. Just kidding.
I watched documentaries. That's all I had. I watched documentaries.
But no, anyways, thank you both so much. And Hive, I will be back on tomorrow at 7 Central. DA or Ally, any closing thoughts before we go?
I have a hot dog on me.
Not your hot dog. A hot dog.
Damn, how am I going to follow that up? God damn it, Lee. Nothing witty to say in response to that.
No, but you guys are great. Thank you so much. I will see you tomorrow night. Cheers,
Thank
everybody.
you so much, everybody. Thanks.
Yep.
Bye-bye.
See ya.
Birds flying high, you know how I feel. Sun in the sky, you know how I feel. Breeze drifting on by, you know how I feel. It's a new dawn, it's a new day, it's a new life.